So, let's start the press conference of the President of Ukraine following the meeting of leaders in support of Ukraine. And not only.
Mr. President will now say a few introductory remarks and then we will move on to the questions. Mr. President, please. It's like in politics. Be sure to first say a few words and then move on to business. But I really want the whole world to get down to business faster. And I would like to thank for the determination shown by France, President Macron. From the very beginning of this war, supporting Ukraine and Ukrainians, our security, all security challenges in Ukraine and all challenges related to Putin's aggression, Russia's aggression. I thank him for that. Yesterday we had a good bilateral meeting. It was very important for us, for Ukrainians, for me personally. We were preparing for today's summit, but there was still a bilateral element in terms of supporting our armed forces. As well as our civilian population, a new package for almost 2 billion, and there is air defense and artillery and some things. I will not go deep so as not to waste your time now, but it is very important. We also discussed the guarantee of security, and today it is one of the main topics of our summit. I want to thank France, also Great Britain, for the summit. Because it is such a platform where they are the main accelerators of this platform. And on the basis of this platform, or the coalition of the willing, as they say, we are building future security guarantees for Ukraine. We all believe in a peaceful Ukraine and really want peace. Today we discussed important issues. It is important that Ukraine raised this issue today. And all 31 voices today supported us that there will be no lifting of any sanctions on Russia until this war ends with a just peace. This is an important signal. The signal is combined from European countries. Not only from the countries of the European Union, from the countries of Europe. This is important. The second is the new support packages. Again, I will not go into details, but some European countries have demonstrated and confirmed this. And in general, the vision of supporting the increase in domestic Ukrainian production, investing in this production. I think this is the right, very right step. We agreed that we will work on the infrastructure of security guarantees in the coming days. We will wait for our partners, some partners, because we need to work out the basis of this in Ukraine. Thanks. And yesterday, the Eiffel Tower demonstrated to the whole world what support Ukraine is. I thank you very much for having our national colors. Thank you very much.
France Television. Thank you for your hospitality. Please first question France Television. Stephanie Perez, France Television.
Mr. President, Emmanuel Macron this morning emphasized that the greatest uncertainty remains regarding the peace negotiations led by the United States. He also said that the United States is a weak ally. Do you share this opinion?
Thank you for your question. I will ask technically if it is possible to translate from French into Ukrainian to make it louder for me. Otherwise, I will only hear Emmanuel Macron in the question and that's it. And you need to understand what the question was about. Definitely. Of course, America is important. Very important. And the solutions that America can now demonstrate. They can influence, they can really affect stopping the war, stopping Putin's desire, because he really wants it. And he really wants to divide Europe and America. It is Putin who wants this. And his whole Kremlin machine, it has been working on it for several years. By the way, in the first year of division, weakening of Europe, weakening of the European Union, weakening of the United States of America, division of the United States of America itself in terms of support for Ukraine. Or not support. And that's why it's his wish. We want America to be stronger. I agree with Emmanuel that we all need, and this is not even a question, but a desire, and we need it so that America is stronger in relation to Russia. We really want the President of the United States to be stronger in relation to the owner of the Kremlin. And why you need to work with this moment. It is necessary to work at the level of leaders, at the level of both official and other formats of diplomacy, to work with the White House.
Thanks. Please, public television of Ukraine.
Good afternoon, Valeria Pashko, Suspilny. Mr. President, we are talking about America. There was information that a new agreement on minerals between Ukraine and the United States was being prepared. So, I have a question. Can you reveal the details, or are we more satisfied with this project than we were a few weeks ago? And maybe you are going to go again to Washington to sign this agreement again? Thank you very much.
I'm not going to go to Washington yet. Because, firstly, there is no such issue on the agenda. Secondly, we have a lot of these agreements on minerals. And therefore, I would like to treat this not theoretically, but practically. When will there be a final version from the United States of America of this or that treaty, another treaty? Because conditions are constantly changing. And it seems to me that we have already agreed that there will be a framework agreement and then a full agreement. And now, as I understand it, the Ukrainian-American teams are working on this because America is now changing these rules and offering a full agreement right away. And a full agreement requires a detailed study of this. Because these are serious agreements that are ratified in the Parliament. But before all this, it is necessary for lawyers to work again. That is, at first the lawyers worked on one transaction, then on the second. In the end, they agreed on a framework agreement. Now there are new rules. Well, you know, we have to act with restraint here. I would say how we try to act constantly. Yes, calmly, do not be nervous, but look at the deal, lawyers will study. There are adequate things we will support. If there are questions, questions are always answered. Therefore, it is too early to talk about an agreement, the version of which has changed several times. But I wouldn't want to have a feeling in the United States of America that Ukraine is against, in general. We constantly showed our positive signals. We do not want to give any signals for cooperation with the United States that the United States should be encouraged to stop Ukrainian aid or stop intelligence sharing. It is important for us to preserve all this. And that's why we act constructively every day.
Thanks. Colleagues, please raise your hands more actively so that I can see who wants to ask questions. But for now, the Inter-Ukraine TV channel.
Good afternoon. Nina Kolomites, Inter TV channel, United News Marathon. President Macron said following today's summit that a Franco-British mission should go to Kiev to determine what can be done to support Ukraine's troops. Please tell us the details that you know, when this will happen, what exactly is it about, and does this agreement include the sending of a military contingent? Is there an understanding based on the results of today's big meeting, in general, which countries are ready to do this? In what terms? To what extent? Are there any specifics?
We dedicate, thank you for asking, we dedicate with President Macron and with Prime Minister Starmer and with other leaders. There is a lot of attention now on infrastructure, as I said, future infrastructure, security guarantees for Ukraine. An important part of this infrastructure is our army, its financing, strengthening the armed forces of Ukraine. We are working on this, and this is also today again a common emphasis of all countries, that Russia cannot dictate about the number of our army. Not now, not in the future. They can talk about something inside their country, it's not interesting. But they cannot dictate the rules for the defense of Ukraine. And it is important that they do not have support in this direction. In Europe, we see that they have no support. Most countries, at least the entire coalition that met today, all support that the country should maintain a strong army which today resists the Russian invasion. And it is important that there is such an attitude in the United States, so today's meeting also transmits such a signal to the United States and others. As for furthermore, in addition to our army, security guarantors, this also applies to the contingent. There are many suggestions from leaders. And there are more of them. The fact that the countries that are ready are increasing. Who and how will help, everyone is different. Someone in the sky, someone with air defense, someone really with boots on the ground, and someone at sea. They are ready to give Ukraine security guarantees and send their contingents. There are more such countries. This is good news. Regarding the actions, responsibilities, modalities of this continent, what it can do, how to apply it, who will manage it, there are many questions. So far, there are few answers. There will be a meeting. As Emmanuel said, I think that others will join the Franco-British one, someone else can join. And they will join in order to look at the basis that Ukraine has prepared. As we see it, where we see it, the quantitative, qualitative composition of this contingent. Start this dialogue more substantively.
Thank you, please. British media. Is there British media in the hall? From Britain? From UK? From UK? No?
From US.
Okay, even better.
Hi there. My name is Catherine Porter, and I'm from the New York Times. I am wondering, you said yesterday in your televised interview with many different public television stations from around Europe that what you really hoped to get today was more firmer commitment from this coalition of the willing in terms of security guarantees. It looks like you didn't get that today. Are you disappointed?
I'm not disappointed, I got things which are very important to me. Constant quantity and maintenance of such quantity. And this is an expensive story, this is our army. And support now, and later, and after the end of the war, and this is important. Further, I am very pleased that now and again later we will invest with partners in the Ukrainian production of drones. Electronic warfare systems. Air defense. And other technological things. I won't talk about them yet, missiles, drones, etc. It is very important for me that this will be carried out not only now, but also later, after the war. Further, a very important signal for me. That we will open sites for the production of drones not only in Ukraine. But this is after the war. And this is also very important for us. This is to guarantee the expansion of this technological process. Next, which is important, sanctions. After what's going on in the world, after the signals that we heard in Saudi Arabia, or from that direction regarding sanctions, and regarding possible withdrawal, etc. Very dangerous signals. Today, everyone confirmed that none of the partners, at least those present, is going to lift sanctions. On the contrary, we emphasize the continuation and new packages. As for the contingent, I just believe that many leaders have their own vision. It's true, it's fair. There are leaders who say that we have no right to forget about NATO. And we agree with them here because this is the simplest infrastructure, the most understandable. And again, sorry to repeat, the cheapest structure. Instead of building an entire infrastructure in Ukraine, there is a clear security infrastructure like NATO already built. But we have what we have. So far, this is a question about NATO. It is not very active yet. But there are leaders who constantly support this direction. There are leaders who say that there may be security guarantees like what is available in some other countries. When there is aggression, the appropriate circle of countries joins in, which are connected at once with all their might. Also, I don't want to go into details, it's too early. And there is a basis that is based on the Ukrainian army and on the contingent that is represented in Ukraine, in the sky, at sea, on the battlefield. As they say, boots on the ground. And we believe that Ukraine will offer an algorithm for dialogue. I think it will be in the next 7 to 10 days with the meeting that President Macron has already announced. And we will be very friendly. But to argue already on the site, which will be ready. That is, we will offer such a basic idea, a basic strategy.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Therefore, I am satisfied.
Yes, please, in the center. Mr. President, good afternoon. Agence France Presse. First, are you optimistic about the ability of the United States to agree to provide air support to Europe in the event of the presence of European forces in Ukraine? And the second question. One of your advisors, who are the negotiators active today, told AFP, I open the quotes that we don't want forces, which will resist. We want European soldiers, who will be ready to fight in Ukraine. Do you agree? Thanks.
And if possible, let's start with the second part first. As for my counselor, I heard the same question yesterday at a press conference with President Macron, only they talked about the advisor yesterday. I did not name anyone. Today you are talking about the advisor again. Again, I have another advisor and again the same question. But for some reason, the advisor asked this yesterday and today this advisor asks again. I'd just like to understand what kind of advisor is and what that means. We don't want any forces. Are there forces that have to fight or what? I don't quite understand what the question is. Can you explain the question about the counselor again? Which counselor do you mean? Which? Who is it? Show me. Who is it? Where is this advisor? I'm so curious.
This counselor was represented. His name is Mr. Javkov, if I'm not mistaken. Yavkov.
Jova, probably.
He who said that we want European soldiers who will be ready to fight. We do not need peace support forces. Thanks.
We don't need peacekeeping forces. Oh, okay. Now I understand the question. Through translation, I understand now. Look, we discussed the contingent. We are talking about the military contingent, about their presence. About our protection and representation of countries, our partners, representation in the sky, at sea and on land, as I said. These are troops. These are troops. We are not talking about UN troops, we are not talking about the OSCE. There are also such proposals, they are on the table, we are discussing, but our position on the OSCE, with all due respect. And we don't want to. Just the presence of the OSCE. These are not guarantees of safety. They have their own functionality, but they do not have a corresponding mandate. There is simply no such thing as a military contingent. And the Russians are not afraid of them. The OSCE was represented in Ukraine to trust our experience since the beginning of the first occupation. After 2014, the OSCE was in Ukraine, they were in the east of our country, first of all, they were in the east. They did not have a mandate, they could not even help us with our boys and girls who were there, behind bars, in the territory of temporary occupation. They couldn't get there. That is, it's a little bit about something else. We are talking about security guarantees. And not just about a frozen conflict, where some people appear on the contact line or on the front line, which provides some kind of monitoring. That is, this is not about that at all. It's about professional people that guarantee the security of Ukraine.
My first question was about your optimism, about the ability of the United States to provide the Europeans with the air support that the Europeans are asking for in the event of a forced presence on your territory.
Thanks. First, we would like to work together with the United States of America to ensure that these security guarantees are provided by both Europe and the United States of America, and I will constantly emphasize this. And also the number of European partners depends on the presence of the United States. We will have more contingents if the United States supports. And what will the United States of America be ready to give? I don't have an answer to this question because we haven't discussed it with them yet. It is important for me. I discussed this with Trump. I told him that anti-air defense systems are important for us. But not a one-time decision. And the permanent system of total 100% protection of the Ukrainian sky. We are talking about the high quality and quantitative component, first of all, which consists of the Patriot, NAMAs and other systems. And such, for example, the presence of the United States of America is very important. And I believe that this is also a guarantee of safety. And also the air fleet. Yes, we discussed this with our European colleagues. But as for the United States of America, we have not raised this issue with them yet, in detail, sorry, we have not raised.
Freedom, vitally decisive. Mr. President, Brussels has now adopted a new program for the rearmament of Europe. They constantly emphasize that Ukraine's participation is unique, that it is already related to Ukraine as a member of the European Union, because Ukraine can receive this money partially. But how do you see it from Kyiv? Are you also as optimistic as the officials in Brussels? And have you already felt any proposals, because they present it as one of the elements of security guarantees? Thanks.
I'm not sure if these are security guarantees. I would call it not a security guarantee, but a guarantee of security financing in Ukraine. Because we are very grateful to the European Commission, the European Union or the presidents. We are grateful that they are giving an opportunity, at least now they are talking about it, they are giving Ukrainian access to these financial programs. At the level of other members of the European Union. For example, like the ReArm app, if we speak ReArm Europe. In which part of the money that will be allocated for the defense of Europe, the partners will provide money bilaterally. Countries will add investments in Ukraine from this money. And this is important for us because they will invest in our production. This is what one of the priorities for us today, as I said, artillery, air defense, drones. Drones and electronic warfare systems. We have a shortage, they know this gap. Let's just say that 50 to 60% of what we can do is financed today. We have a budget for this. Our internal budget or bilateral agreements with partners within the framework of our security agreements. But there are still opportunities, there are 45 to 50% opportunities for production. Thanks.
Thanks. Next question, please. You say that the American position is quite fuzzy now. The position of the Europeans is also unclear, even at the exit of this summit, which was supposed to clarify something. So tell me, please, is the position of the Europeans clear, and is it decisive and unanimous enough?
The position of Europeans today was unanimous. The position was clear about things, which I have already mentioned. Sorry to repeat myself, but they are important to us. Sanctions, investing in our domestic production, and any case of guaranteeing security for Ukraine and participating in the future system of security guarantees for Ukraine. A vague position on the contingent is a fact because there is no infrastructure yet. But there is definitely a desire, and with each such meeting, this is not the first such summit we have. In this format, in a new one, of the whole of Europe or the majority. And with each such summit, the position is stronger and clearer. For example, it seems to me an important point. We haven't talked about it yet. The Ukrainian position is very clear. That Europe should be at the negotiating table to end the war. Necessarily. We do not consider alternatives. This is our clear position. Europe is very large. And it must have a clear representation at this negotiating table. Today, we, all partners in Europe, have agreed that Europe will be represented by France and Britain. Macron and Starmer. I think this is also important. This is a clear position. And we want to convey this signal to all other partners. Of course, the United States of America. And I think that each of these summits, each of these meetings will show us our next steps more clearly. It's not easy when, you know, there are a lot of countries in this system. Today there were more than 30 countries, and we need a generalization. And each country, each leader has his own view. The main thing that summarizes us is that everyone is in favor of supporting Ukraine, for guaranteeing security for us. And it is very important that they are on our side and steadfast, so as not to betray the interests of Ukraine, our respectful territorial integrity and sovereignty. Without legally recognizing any of the territories which Russia occupied. Without legally recognizing any of these territories as Russian. This is also very important because from the United States of America we have heard signals, you see, about certain compromises on territories. We have seen them, we have heard them in the media. And in Saudi Arabia, we didn't talk about it. And here it is very important that there is a united position on the European continent. United. No one will give either Putin or Russia our lands. They violated international law. And they must be responsible for this. This is also our common equal position. At least those who were present today.
Yes, please, your questions. Good afternoon, Nicholas Berno, Art. We understood the difference between peacekeeping forces and guarantee forces. President Macron has clearly shown the difference that they will not stand directly on the line of exile, but in strategic places in order to guarantee strategic security. My first question is, in what form will this contingent be represented? And did you also talk to President Macron about military instructors? At what stage is this project?
The task of the relevant contingent will be not only security guarantees. All security guarantees are not only their location in strategic places. I just can't talk about the details yet. Although I already understand some things because we understand and we have some agreements. But there is also training, there is production, there is co-production, there are licenses from our partners, and the decisions are very long and difficult. But Emmanuel and I have already agreed on some things. And there are licenses that we want to get from partners to produce this in Ukraine. It's faster and it's cheaper. To be honest, and the exchange of technologies, their own technologies. Our best practices during this war, which we have on drones, for example, on missiles, on defense, air defense, we will share these developments with those partners. Who guarantee us the security with their contingents, with their presence?
Thanks. The next question, please, is ahead.
France 24, Julie Douglas. We see how the negotiations went in Saudi Arabia. That there were 3 different communiques between different delegations. We see how summits are held at the European level, and the EU Council, very few concrete advances. Don't you think that we are advancing very slowly here in Europe? And can you trust the Americans today?
Compared to a country at war, the whole world lives very slowly. And these are not reproaches, these are just completely different realities. And I agree with you here. Unfortunately, what we want to do in a week, we do in months. What we can do and defend ourselves in a day, solve some issues, it takes weeks and sometimes months again. Judging by the equipment that is being repaired, why do we want to do so much in Ukraine? Why did I always want to get licenses from partners and, unfortunately, the United States never pressed to get licenses for the production of Patriots? Why? Because all this is very, very long. We receive missile strikes every day, and unfortunately, we will continue to receive it. We have losses every day. Unfortunately, there are dead and wounded, and these are great losses for us. It's very difficult to explain to people who live in a different size, in a different speed, in a different, you know how to say it, in a different world of representation. I don't even know. You know, like, I didn't want to talk about it. About trust or distrust. For example, as one of the representatives of the United States of America in Russia, Witkoff. And he says things, and they look like nonsense. What he says, for us, for Ukrainians, it looks very abstract, you know. That is, it is from a completely different world. For us, these people, they are from another planet. We are at war. And someone told me that he is a very substantive person, he has always been a businessman, he has been involved in real estate, etc. And I will give you such an example. I think that when he was engaged in real estate, people usually ask what is the view from the window, where the windows of all the properties look, how many rooms. And in Ukraine, in order to immediately understand where we are, we have only one question about real estate. Is there a bomb shelter in this house? That is, you see, this is not reproaches to someone, it's just that we live in different realities. Just another world. We want to live in a normal world, in normal realities, in peaceful. And we are doing everything for this. But we just have a view even on the same things, but different. And so when you say, don't you think everything is slow? Look, really, I think so. But we can't push everyone. We are already doing what we can, and we are trying very hard. We live in different times. Unfortunately, this is a fact. And here the question is not about faith or distrust. What about the United States of America as our partners? Europe will be safer today. And Ukraine will receive more aid today. It's just not about trust or mistrust. These are just absolutely obvious pragmatic things. That the future should be built on security alliances is not on paper. That Europe should be able to defend itself on its own. That decisions must be made very quickly. You know, because of this war, you know, here's an example of communication. For example, I talk to Emmanuel very quickly. And very quickly on a daily basis and with others. And when the war broke out with many leaders, I started talking very quickly on the phone. 'Cause I said, it's very difficult for us to order. You know how it used to be done. And in many countries of the world still, is it possible to book a conversation with a leader? And the conversation will be in 5 days. The war, unfortunately, but it won. The war itself won. It defeated all this. Technology helps to resolve issues faster. And you have it again. You don't have another chance. In the first days of the war, I had communication 15, 20, 25. I had 30 leaders every day. 30 communication leaders, I talked to them. Every day. If I were to book a conversation and would not have direct communication, honestly, we wouldn't have succeeded. The question is not in me, the question is in our people, in the armed forces, the question is in everything. But we are in all directions. And I, including as the main communicator of my state. And so am I. We are changing this whole story. Such is digital diplomacy. It is just like that today. And so the fact that you're right, that everything is very slow. Yes. Unfortunately. But everything is already much faster than it was, believe me.
French edition of Le Monde, Philippe Lecker. Thank you for this press conference. You are talking about communication between you and various Western leaders. How do you qualify your relationship with Donald Trump now? It came 15 days after the event in the Oval Office. Do you trust him again? Has trust been restored? And also, speaking of the method that the Americans chose for these negotiations, In your opinion, at what point will it be necessary to switch to direct negotiations between Russia, Ukraine and the United States with the participation, as you said, of Europeans, in one room? And what are the blocking of such a situation? Do you think this is Putin's blocking? That he doesn't want to see you? And at what point do you need to switch to a different format?
What are the blockages? There is only one block. This is Russia, namely Putin. It's very simple. He is not ready for direct negotiations. We are not afraid of any negotiations. I am not afraid of any format of victories. We are at war not theoretically, but very practically, unfortunately. And I know everything. Everything that is happening now in our country during the war, we understand where we have difficulties, what is at the front, what is at every kilometer, what is missing. We deal with weapons, I deal with weapons, I talk to some leaders, and they were always surprised. I knew more details about what they had in service. What do they have in service? What are the systems? I know better than they do. This is not a reproach in their direction, again. I needed it more. And I studied all this and understood it in detail. Therefore, I know exactly what we need, what we lack. And I am ready for any format of negotiations. I have never been afraid. Just, Putin wants war. What can a person who wants war say in peace negotiations? I'm not the kind of person who will sit and be silent, or swallow all these narratives of his. I am not interested in his points in the Crimea, his red caviar, etc. I don't know, maybe he will surprise someone else in the world, but for me they are dinosaurs, you know. They just want to eat us, and we need to defend our rights. And so you can't just, listen, let's talk. And I have nothing to just talk about with him. We have one goal, to end the war, to make it end. If we are weak in these negotiations, he will threaten in any case and do everything possible to ensure that Ukraine loses its sovereignty. Which is the loss of one's identity. Over time. And we cannot allow this to happen. So I'm absolutely ready. That is, I am ready for any negotiations, but I would like to be in a strong position. And this is where the answer to your first part arises. What do we want from America? What do I need from President Trump? I told him about it from the first day of our conversations. It is important for me that Ukraine is in a strong position in these negotiations. So that we have a chance to end the war negotiated and not just end, but to have a just peace, a sustainable peace, so that tomorrow there will be no war again. That's what I want these guarantees from the United States. And the question is not how I feel about Trump. I also said this to President Trump. I told him, yes, but in 3 years you will have another president. And in 10 years you will have another president. But the peoples of Europe, the people of Ukraine, the people of the United States of America will all exist. And if Putin guarantees Trump something today, and you believe it, Mr. President Trump, then after you he can break what he tells you. Even if you believe in something. Who will bear all this responsibility? We need a clear, just, clear peace. Effective, which, regardless of who is the president, who is the prime minister, who is the leader. Regardless of this, there are security guarantors that work. And if you don't give us NATO, namely you, President Trump, today you decide it. Because you are the President of the United States of America. This is both strength and responsibility. And it's up to you. If you don't give NATO, then what? We ask you to give something that will work the same way. I don't know what it is. We have options for the ones we are talking about today. We have no other choice. Every day we must generate some adequate security options. Because our strategic partner is not ready to give us those security guarantees that other NATO countries have. And if the Russians violate any agreements and America effectively responds to this, then we all trust America and trust the president. And if they violate it and they are punished for it, and they have nothing for it and they do nothing and there are no sanctions, but on the contrary, people are discussing the easing of sanctions. So this is not a question of trust. Here the question is completely different. What to do with all this next?
Please, Reuters. Reuters. What communication did you and your team have with the United States regarding the ceasefire in the Black Sea after Russia put forward its conditions? Did the Americans come back to you and explain what was going on? Don't you know about it? And returning to the issue of security forces, President Macron has clearly decided to send his troops to Ukraine without US support. But will these troops ever be able to operate practically if America does not support?
Let's get to the first part of the question. And the second then, if I can, I would like to hear from you more details about what you want to hear from me. I didn't quite understand about the troops. Let's talk about the first. We had 2 meetings in Saudi Arabia. First meeting, we arrived because the United States of America has offered an unconditional ceasefire. This is a proposal from the United States of America. Not my proposal, not our people. It is a proposal of the United States of America. It was important for us to unlock aid and get intelligence, and to demonstrate that Ukraine wants to end the war through diplomacy, so as not to lose people. I believe we have done it all. America unblocked, we demonstrated. The American side told us that there would be such a conversation in parallel with the Russians. The Russians did not agree to an unconditional ceasefire. What was demonstrated to America, in my opinion? I believe that after that there should have been sanctions. Okay, let's pause. We will not advise the United States, they have their own people whom to advise. But, nevertheless, the Russians did not go for it. The Russians proposed some other format. We don't know about it. We can guess with you. Or analyze what we do. There was a second meeting, at which a partial ceasefire was proposed by the American side. By the way, they offered what we had in Bergenstock. Sorry. It's about the slowness of time, about your questions about the slowness of time. By the way, silence in the sky, silence at sea and the exchange of people and the return of children, such a decision was made regarding the peace formula in Bergenstock, Switzerland, a year and a half ago. Are we not slowly ending the war? It's not even slow, it's worse. But okay, America was able to somehow talk to the Russians and make them talk to them about a ceasefire in general. And they offered the same agenda again. Silence in the sky, silence at sea and humanitarian exchange. And we had a meeting about it. This was the agenda of our meeting. We believed that America and the Russians had a parallel meeting of the same kind, and that they have the same agenda. But this is their bilateral relationship. As for our agenda, we came to America, after communicating and consulting with the Russians, said that they are ready not to shoot at energy and silence in the sea. By the way, you just said only about the Black Sea. I would like to tell you, silence in the Black Sea is what the Russians need. They lost there. And our food security corridor works without Russians for a long time. But we are definitely for an unconditional end to the fire, a ceasefire. Therefore, we are ready for energy, civilian infrastructure, and silence at sea. But the Russians are again changing some agreements and telling the Americans about sanctions. Regarding the lifting of sanctions, that's basically everything that happens. And therefore, 3 different documents. What the Americans offered us and we supported it. The second document, the fact that the Americans discussed with the Russians and he also appeared on the website of the official sanctuary of the White House. And the third document, Russians. They don't care what the Americans agree with them there, they have their own position. Here's what happened. Something like this.
What do Americans tell you now? There are these 3 documents.
They say that they believe that silence in the sea, silence in the energy sector works. I believe the following. 2 days ago, there was a night when there were no strikes on the energy sector. Today, the energy sector in the city of Kherson was damaged by Russian artillery. That's how it works. This is how the agreements were. There were 3 documents. I believe that 3 documents, this suggests that these are not quite normal agreements, in my opinion. That's why it works with the Russians. And so, in my opinion, if there was a violation today, and there were strikes on Kherson, there were strikes on the railway station, and the electricity was damaged, because there were also strikes on the energy sector. And in the city of Kherson, a civilian city. This is not a battlefield, and civilians have lost energy. And I believe there should be a reaction from the United States in action. Our side, what will it do while no one understands who is monitoring what? Because I believe that it is not clear who will monitor it how. But we clearly understand. Where were the shots? What is destroyed? What is lost? Believe me, during the 3 years of the war, we can clearly see what they are shooting, with evidence, with footage, with video, with everything. We have all this, we will prepare it all. The Minister of Defense received this order from me. This will be prepared and transmitted to the United States of America. And after that, we are waiting for the reaction of the United States of America. As they told us, that they will react to violations.
Thank you, please. The next question is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Elsa Vadel, BFM TV. You just talked recently about French investments in Ukrainian defense. Did you also talk about the possibility of not freezing Russian assets? And about this plan, which gives Ukraine the right to lend on the basis of these frozen assets? That is, as a guarantee of financing. And what do you think is the most optimal financing scheme for Ukraine? If we talk specifically about frozen Russian assets,
we are talking about investments. There are several programs of the European Union, and there are appropriate investments there. There are investments due to the fact that we use this money. This is a percentage of these frozen assets. You know this, we have the right to do so. But the safest, be able to take these frozen assets and spend on what Russia is destroying. The reconstruction of our logistics, the army, the construction of bomb shelters for children, bomb shelters in schools, universities, bomb shelters in hospitals, etc. And there are a lot of them. Because I believe that if you don't find a way not only to freeze, but to take away these assets, it may happen that later, after the end of the war, all of us, after the end of the war, will still fight with the Russians for these assets. So, in order not to fight later, you need to take them away while there is this opportunity.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, we have been talking for almost an hour, so we have to conclude. There is still time for one last question. Raphael, for the Swiss broadcaster, a more personal question for you. In what mood are you leaving Paris today? Did this summit bring peace or a ceasefire closer? What picture can you provide to Europeans after the end of this summit, where you talked with European leaders?
The mood is normal. I think the summit was very motivating. I believe that. Thank you again, Emmanuel, for organizing. I believe that my dialogue with leaders motivates. I believe that the leaders are all charged. I believe that the leaders are not abandoning us, but will support Ukraine. This is a bad signal for Putin. We're not going to give up, to surrender their lands, their independence. Evil will not be able to cope with us so easily. And that's why my mood is very normal. We are not alone. Ukraine is a strong country that really wants peace. But peace is stable again, which will be long, important for all of us, for our children and for us. We are also still young.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, the press conference has come to an end.
Thank you all. Goodbye.